Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to a new episode of our podcast, which we call Communicate with Power. I'm here with Laura Peck, waving just in case. Laura Peck with me, my partner in all of this. And Laura and I are here to just share with you some observations about what's been going on the Canadian and American political scenes. Trying not to be too blatantly political, but just rather observe what is going on. Well, Laura, it's been a pretty busy week, and I understand you had kind of an exciting noon hour. Tell us about that.
Well, if you know Ottawa, you know that the entire House of Commons is being renovated, dug up, closed. However, it's been extraordinary this summer that we've had classes there. And so it's kind of thrilling because I used to work in the center block. So for me, it's almost emotional to be looking at the Parliament buildings and all of this there's Teddy, don't pay any attention. Anyway, you see all of this machinery above us, and workmen on the hill, on top of the rooftops, that kind of thing. Anyway, so today we had our last yoga class, and at the same time, there were protesters on the hill. Now, I'm not going to say what they were
Well, I
protesting.
want to tell. It
No,
was the
no, 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 no,
Palestinian
no, no.
protesters. There's nothing, wrong with revealing that. I mean, frankly, they got very political and kind of yelling at what 200 women on the hill, and what really happened out of that?
There was a sprinkling of men there also.
Hmm.
Anyway, it's just the whole dynamic that we were there peacefully doing yoga, and then on the other side of the lawn, there were people with loudspeakers yelling at us, saying unkind things to us. And it was an extraordinary experience, that's for sure. And I hope it doesn't happen
So
again.
it was cut off. Like that was the end of it. It was just sort of
No, no,
cut,
no, no. The teachers kept on
kept on
going.
going. Okay,
Prana,
all right,
Shante, I have to give those yoga teachers a lot of credit.
great,
They just kept right on going.
good,
And
all
yeah.
right. Well, although you mentioned Parliament, of course, and that was really the big thing this week. Monday was the kickoff return of the House, new session of Parliament, of course, with Prime Minister Carney for the first time facing off against Pierre Poilievre, leader of the opposition. And let's explore a bit. How did that all go? Well, Laura, do you have any observations? That we watched it together? So,
Interesting. There were a few new MPs who stopped me on the hill because they had never seen yoga on the hill. So it led itself to an interesting chit chat. But anyway, in terms of what's happening policy wise, it is one thing to be in the House of Commons, but then everybody is wondering about the budget, which will happen in November on the 4th. So the honeymoon period has been kaput.
yeah, it was interesting. I mean, Mark Carney, he'd been apparently six times up in question period before, and seemed to be surprisingly calm, cool, and collected. And again, he seemed to be that way this week as well already. So that doesn't seem to phase him too much. But of course, Pierre Poilievre is the master of the attack questions. He didn't waste any time. There was some niceties for the first 30 to 60 seconds where he thanked the prime minister for actually immediately calling a by-election, allowing him to get into the House. If Mr. Carney wanted to be kind of tough and mean and show him who's in charge, he could have delayed up to 6 months before calling that by-election. So he did give him that favor, but it didn't last long because, boy, the fireworks really did begin. All right, so there's that, and I think you mentioned it. The new budget, that's going to be everything in my view. The deficit. How big is it going to be? Already, you're seeing now the opposition
So
consumed with that.
you said it when you talked about Pierre Poilievre, but when we ask people, and I ask people all the time, what should the prime minister do? What should Pierre Poilievre do? So they'll always say, well, they want for Pierre Poilievre to be more conciliatory in his manner,
Hmm.
and yeah, exactly,
I'm
Barry.
well. I'm kind of a little, questioning that. I mean, in the end, he is leader of the opposition. His total mission is to hold the government's feet to the fire, the prime minister's feet to the fire on issues of the day. He's certainly doing that. He's always done that. He's not going to change in that. He's not going to become Mr. Nice Guy. I said in my radio interview, one of them this week, that he's got to learn, though, not to cross from the dotted line from tough to mean. He can start to sound very mean and get very personal in his attacks. And Canadians just don't like that. Americans are well, whatever you want to say, Americans clearly are either used to that or they just sort of it rolls over them because they just think that's politics. Well, in Canada, we're slowly coming to that, and I think you're seeing more and more of it. But Canadians don't like it, and I think if Mr. Polyev wants to get across the hump and get into government, he's going to have to make sure that he has more of a three-dimensional personality. That yes, the proverbial is he the leader you want to have a beer with. Right now, he's not there yet, and it's up to him to see if he can actually make that shift at the very least. All right, well, let's turn now to the American political scene. A lot going on there with the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Obviously, I think there isn't a person who, at least a reasonable person around, who doesn't condemn that act of violence. Certainly, absolutely appalling, especially in front of all those university students who shared in that trauma and may well have ongoing trauma as a result of witnessing that. It was horrible. But then you get to all the politicization of it, where you have, the president and his cabinet secretaries and everything else. Just it's all about the lefties, the radical left. There was the president, the very first comment from the Oval Office on it, immediately politicizing it, and it's a shame that it has to be politicized because you are seeing extremists from left and right who say and do horrible things. I was a bit disappointed to hear the governor of Utah say that essentially only violence is the physical act of violence, that verbal is not violent. Well, violent words often lead to violent actions. And I think to separate them out and say, well, violent words mean nothing, I think that's wrong. I think as a leader of a state and leaders of countries and so on, to, part of the role, I think, is to discourage, violent talk. And yet that
And
seems to be,
guns, they've got to stop
well,
with the guns.
there's a whole thing on that. You don't really hear a tremendous amount on that because people have staked out their positions. And Charlie Kirk himself, rest in peace, was talking exactly about defending the Second Amendment rights to bear arms. And, he was shot in the middle of the whole idea of defending the Second Amendment and, allowing as many guns as you want. So I think that, thank goodness, in Canada we aren't there with regard to that. It's not that we're perfect. It's not that, oh, look at us, aren't we wonderful? But I think in Canada it's not part of the culture. It's certainly not really one that most Canadians support. So that's one thing that obviously is very disturbing. I'm kind of intrigued though to see there is the president over there on his second state visit to the United Kingdom, and there he was with King Charles III, and he was given the literally the royal treatment. Nobody does it better than the Brits. We had an event next door at the British High Commission last night, and they are really good. They didn't pull that kind of thing, but they certainly, that's part of the amazing thing that they do have that no country on earth can beat. The British when it comes to the kind of royal treatment. And it's a bit sad in my view that there's the president clearly basking in it. It's all done either indoors or in the inner courtyard so that nobody can really see him. You get a bit of a glimpse on the landau on the way in, but frankly,
the public cannot.
Probably can't. I mean, it's all done for one person, and it's kind of sad. Melania, there was Melania with the hat on, even indoors. They were doing things, with King Charles and Camilla, and there she had the hat. You couldn't even see her really most of her face. So I don't know if that's accidental or on purpose, but there are certain things about this that, boy, if that's the price you got to pay to get your tariffs, at least easing off the accelerator on the tariffs of the American tariffs on the UK, I guess they're willing to do it because Prime Minister Starmer certainly offered that up in the Oval Office to the president. We're not going to offer him things like that here in Canada.
So we do have a question
Yeah.
from one of our viewers, and thank you for watching this on Substack. But they want to know more about this misinformation, disinformation course that we are running with Jennifer Irish in October, and it will be held at the University of Ottawa at the Professional Development Institute.
Yeah. And it's actually called Risk and Crisis Communications in an Age of Disinformation. And that's the age we're in. Massive disinformation, especially you see that on social media, but it seeps into almost everything. And every it seeps into mainstream media. It's certainly saturated in online digital media and social media. And what does this mean for communicating sensitive risk issues? That's issues that affect life, health, safety, and the environment. How do you prepare to communicate sensitive issues like that when you've got the whole uh, reality of disinformation clouding it and distorting the facts? Crisis is important because many organizations are facing crises of confidence in them, their competence, that where they are in the market, the products that they sell, and governments can be undermined by this misinformation and disinformation. What do you do strategically, tactically, messaging when it comes to dealing with mis or disinformation? And that's what this 2.5 day course is all about. As Laura mentioned, it's with the Professional Development Institute of the University of Ottawa, and it is on October 8th, 9th, and 10th. There's still room for several more participants. We'd love to have you come, and we will post with this podcast the link to go to find out more and hopefully register. It's all in person, by the way.
Coincidentally, we always meet people who will say what they like are real world examples. Most people will know things from reading books or from academics, which we totally respect. However, what people mostly like is the real deal of a story or a case study of something that we'd have handled with. It could be with a large grocery chain, or it could be a banker or something like that. So the case studies that we do on misinformation are cases that we've actually had a hand in, that we've actually helped people on for years and years. And so now we sort of condense it into a 3-day course, but there'll be lots of interaction. And certainly, what the Information Integrity Lab has done is the hard research, the data, that kind of thing.
Yeah,
and
really good stuff.
Really good stuff.
Yeah, so looking forward to that and many more. We'd like to hear more from you. Click on this. We hope you subscribe to this because then we'd like you to also ask us questions. What would you like to see us cover? We're very open to taking your suggestions and making this part of the content.
So the two things you asked about was what was our take on Canadian and American politics and the new course. So we're very open to whatever your questions are. We'd love to hear from you.
All right. So until next time, I'm Barry McLaughlin.
And I'm Laura Peck.
See you, and we hope you too can communicate with power.